Martin, it's been how long? 10 years? Is it
At
longer?
least
12 maybe?
maybe 12, yeah.
But it's really annoying that you simply haven't aged.
But you have it. It's a flashback. It's
inside
a déjà vu.
it's all falling apart inside. That's the thing. But it's terrific to see you and see you in London again.
Great to see you.
And particularly with this concert, the Night Passages is a collection of pieces I really, really love.
Yeah.
But where does the title come from?
Well, this concert will be then a French half first, and then after intermission it will be the Night Passages.
Yeah.
You know, it has a quite strange story. It was in the end of the pandemic, and I had this disease called Meniere, and I had a huge episode during the pandemic. So when I didn't have any concert, I have hearing loss and vertigo, dizziness every day. So I was basically living in the bathroom. And then in the end, it went better. And then I was in my car, and I got an attack in the car. So and finally the car stopped, and I was lying there in the night, and then it made me rethink a lot of things. So then I started to memorize all the really important sort of small memories with music, connected with music, even before I was born. Right. And I pick all these things, and I made a collection which was strong memories, all kinds of music, from jazz, from Miles Davis, from Baroque music to folk music, of course, and so on. And then I put together these. And it was, it came from this night feeling, and the Night Passage is maybe connected with dreams, because I connect every single piece to dreams or memory dreams that I had.
Do you connect that to your phrase "life after birth"? Is that related in any way to that?
Well, you never know if it's true or not, but I have a memory that was before and my birth, and that is Purcell and Scarlatti, and then comes when my mother sang to me, and these memories, and of course I put away a lot of things also, but the most what I could combine it to a album I took, so it's like 15 or 16 songs or pieces.
Well, that's terrific.
And that's called Night Passage, because it's in the it's in the borderlands.
Well, that's yes, exactly. And it's very spiritual and mystical, and nighttime is.
Exactly.
Well, I really look forward to this. We're particularly pleased to see you because, as you know, OHMI is making instruments for disabled people, and adaptations have tended to be pretty dreadful. There are challenges to make them which have no limit to the virtuosity that's possible. That for a disabled musician, we need to provide instruments that give them the full capacity to go to whatever level of virtuosity that they wish or are capable of. So in this challenge for us, we've made a number of instruments like this, but one of the more difficult ones has been the clarinet. But fortunately, we have Peter Worrell, who has designed this instrument. Do you want to? Which I think you may have seen but never perhaps touched before. But this is designed for for one-hand performance. Peter, do you want to describe how it works?
Yeah, so the right hand or the left hand? Right hand.
This one is for the right hand. The way it works is, if you imagine your hand, your fingertips are your predominant hand. So in this case, it's the right hand. So your fingertips would operate the normal right hand keys. Okay, if you haven't got your other hand, so what do you do with that? So you take every part of this hand here, which then becomes your other hand. So you then can use your fingertips, but then use the other sections of your hand to play the upper register that you cannot achieve. Now, of course, I've noticed only today actually that some of the players have learnt to actually come away and use their fingertips, which of course have got a much better feeling to them. So there's no rules about how you learn to play the instrument. The most important thing is that if you've only got one hand, you can't play the clarinet. It's impossible. But
no, you can't.
Fortunately now, at least you can have a go and hopefully become much, much better.
Yes, a question. So all these are actually up here?
That's correct, yeah.
And the tuning is these two, yes, absolutely, you can tune with one hand as well.
Ah, that's right. So you go up here and you...
And you push it together and it will raise the barrel just enough for tuning.
So it gets longer, or can I do it?
Yeah.
Ooh. And then out again.
Yeah, we haven't worked out how to actually
get it down.
So basically you push it on the ground and that's right. That's right.
So that's an enormous achievement because it's an extremely fine instrument.
Fantastic.
For those children now growing up with this instrument, we hope there will be some.
I remember we spoke about it in the angle of that I had I broke my
That's
arms,
right. Exactly.
and that was the right hand. But you made it for both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then I was very ambitious, but I was in the 20s, so I came to my teacher and learned the bumblebee with one hand. But he sent me home because it was obvious that I should take a break. But I felt it like it was. I did everything I could with one hand actually, and then of course now you can do all the notes.
Yeah,
with one hand.
yeah, that's the idea. But now that having achieved this design, the biggest issue that we have now is they're incredibly expensive to make. Massively expensive. I mean, an instrument like this is entirely crafted by hand, so you can imagine the expense involved. So, of course, then that becomes the aspect of preclusion is now financial.
Yeah.
So, myself and OHMI, Claire, I'd like to say that, have been working on a project to be able to produce an instrument which is more economically viable for somebody to start.
And that work has been made possible by Arts Council funding.
Yes,
Arts Council
absolutely has.
Arts Council England, I'm sorry.
So the latest fashionable thing is 3D printing.
Oh.
So what we have here is our very first prototype development of the same instrument that Claire is holding, but entirely 3D printed. Now we've overcome a lot of challenges with this new material and this new technique.
What is the material? The plastic?
It's a form of photo reactive plastic.
Wow.
So this has enabled me to actually manufacture this entire thing in my own workshop with relatively inexpensive machinery. We are hoping, of course, to be able to produce them in greater numbers and make them more cost effective for students to actually play.
How much is this then?
We don't know yet.
You don't know?
We don't know.
Depends on
the grid.
It depends on the piece of feet, actually.
That's right.
It's an unknown figure. But I literally put this together last Saturday. So it is as fresh as, but it does play.
Fantastic. Yeah, can you use them the octave as well?
Yes,
of course you can.
Here's your.
That's everything's there. Fantastic.
Everything's there. We just need to be able to make them better, more efficiently. But as a first prototype of an instrument, I think we've kind of done okay.
Well, I think it's a perfect idea because also I think when I work with Buffet with this Prodigy clarinet that they make in these plastic, and I have sometimes that clarinet with me, the Buffet, when I go to the States, for example. Sometimes it's where was I? Montreal or where it's very dry. I take it up and I practice on it because I don't want my own to crack. And it's so good sound. I mean, it's really, really good sound. So I think if you do these right, it can be very high level without being a wooden one.
The challenge for us in particular, in England we have this thing called whole class teaching. where primary school children,
Yeah.
they select an instrument and they have a teacher come in and they teach that instrument to the whole class, the same instrument. But of course, until we're able to produce this instrument, if the school selected the clarinet, then disabled children were unable to participate and they were excluded.
Yeah.
So now we've got the exclusion, except that they are very expensive. So the proposition with the 3D printed one is that we can make them affordable for the whole class teaching. And as we go on with other instruments, we have a recorder already which can do the same.
Which you
thing.
have done as well. What?
Yeah.
So that's a great start. So you start with the recorder and then you go on to the clarinet.
Exactly. And there are more instruments. That I know Peter's as ambitious as we are for instruments. They're complicated. My biggest fear at the moment is what we do without Peter. If for some reason Peter was seduced away to some other great instrument making heaven, what on earth would we do? but at least we have these models now on which we can build, and we're carrying on through the orchestra with that process. We've done most of the brass section now, and we got way through the wind section.
Which instrument did you start with?
I would say some of the easier ones to do that we could do almost immediately, like the trumpet. We have the problem of the third valve slide and tuning, but at a lower level, it was mostly to do with supportive equipment. Just to be able to put it on a stand, to be able that stand to have flexibility but strength, those kind of problems. But they were quite quick to resolve. And in some of the areas of the orchestra, we are moving into electronics, where we think just physically we can't get the mechanical adaptation to work, the strings in particular. So we're moving also into electronics, and with the trust and university participation in that area, particularly Queen Mary University of London and Birmingham City University. So we're working our way through, but it takes a long time, of course, and a lot of specialist skill. It would be really great if we could at some point get you one just to play around with. And
I would love to have one. I mean, I would love to have these.
Yeah.
I mean, not this particular these one, but that model.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking also, when I started my foundation, that was mainly towards children. So that was what we have given away. We had one project in Madagascar and one in Kenya, and we get the plastic clarinet to them. Buffet was supporting them,
right?
And of course, that was a fantastic instrument to have. I mean, I'm sure this is also. I don't know the material if it's the same, but I think it's a great start to do that. And if it's cheaper or if it's more affordable, then of course you should.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't realize you were actually using instruments or providing instruments as well.
That's the main thing, actually, because it's very difficult for me to. I'm playing concerts sometimes and get money into the foundation, but of course the support from Buffet Crampon with the instrument, because that's mainly what they do, is great, because also people need to start. And it's good also to have an instrument that if you know how that sound, what quality it is, you can be more, secure what you're talking about, sound quality wise and so on.
Are you going to produce an E flat as well at some stage?
No.
That's a very short answer. You'll go on, yes.
But I already make a standard E flat clarinet, which has taken 4 years to design.
Oh, really?
Yes. I can't imagine wanting to go back over it and making it into a one-handed instrument.
Really?
It's the E flat clarinets are, well, as Martin will testify, in terms of playing, can be particularly tricky. But also, if you're trying to design them to be better than what is already on the market, then that's extremely difficult as well.
Look, I should mention that Claire is also a woodwind player and a teacher. It's a considerable experience. This issue of, we're talking about whole class teaching there, but the issue is bigger than just the school.
It is, and I think whole class is where an awful lot of children first encounter an instrument, and being able to participate within the rest of the class is so important in terms of inclusion and not leaving children out. And our last whole class festival in last summer, we had one child who was playing one of these instruments along with a class of children playing standard clarinets. In another time, she would have had to sit out and watch. There she was able to participate with the rest of the class, which was magical. But for children wanting to progress beyond the beginner stage, having an instrument that they can learn rather than just be told, well, you can get a few notes out of a standard instrument and then time to move on. You're not a clarinist. Being able to teach progressing children on a proper instrument is fantastic, and it also comes into it. So not just for those who have a limb difference or limb weakness in their youth, but players who have had a stroke.
Exactly.
Coming back to it, I have one student who used to play saxophone, had a stroke, completely lost power down his right side, and is now learning on a left-handed clarinet, and it's wonderful because it provides a route back into music for people for whom it's otherwise.
It is extraordinary how it's been ignored for so.
Yeah, I remember that when I was in school, actually in the same school in Germany when I broke my arm, there was one guy who lost his thumb and had to stop.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
And it was only the thumb.
Yeah.
So I mean, he would, yeah.
It does. I mean, some of the instruments, excuse me, have to be altered again for particular disabilities, and it isn't just solved when you find a one-handed instrument. We have to get greater variation for that. The flute's a good example of that, isn't it? Where we've had to make sort of bends and other ways where it's held. Some of it, like the trombone, is just a matter because it's of course infinitely playable with one hand, except it's got to be supported. So we have a shoulder support, which is very firm and very successful, and it's turning into be a very complicated, multifarious set of problems that go well beyond individual instruments into the nature of and the fine differences in physical motor disabilities and differences. But to have recognition and support from people like yourself is really important. It does bring terrific focus to it as well. And if we could ever get you playing one of those on a stage, that would be...
But then I had to learn it. I mean, even if you have done it very well, it must take lots of practicing, yeah?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like learning a new instrument, even for me.
Yes.
Yes. It is.
So no, I can play some.
Yeah.
Definitely, we should do that.
Well, John,
I promise. I should. I mean, even if I couldn't play a very virtuosic piece, I could play something. You know.
Yes.
Just to also to hear the sound and how it connects with. I think that's something we really should do. I'm very interested in doing.
Really
just to know what you are talking about later.
And then you can do something else with the other hand.
That's what I thought when you tried it now. That what can you do with the other hand? My God.
Duet with yourself.
Exactly. But then you have to learn one left and one right. That's the best. So you can stand like this.
But you can sing too, can't you?
I can sing.
Yeah.
I don't do it tonight, but I have a new piece that I will do with Concertgebouw Orchestra after Christmas now, and the whole movement is singing, playing. So it's not the normal thing that everyone professional clarinet can do with multiphonics. They scream in the clarinet or something. This is a circular breathing, a 3-step breathing technique that relaxes your vocal cords, and then you can sing with your normal voice. So I do. So it's 2 systems in the notes. So one for my voice and one for my playing, and it's really working. So it's a very So I do when I do these like circular breathing, then I sing. So that it's possible. Then and it sounds like that.
So you're playing the instrument, you're singing,
and I have 2
and
like
you're and you're circular breathing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And maybe with your feet.
Yeah, I saw actually some of my colleagues showed me a fantastic video with a guy who has these rhythm things, and I was very inspired. But actually that's a great idea. That's what we should do. If we promote this clarinet, I should only play a beautiful melody, because the sound is the most important thing. I think the sound is so important. How you shape, how you learn to shape, to articulate, and to sound. And if this instrument could sound as good as a normal clarinet, then people will get so inspired and want to continue, even if it's really tricky with the right or the left hand.
Exactly.
That has always been I was always fascinating about sound, or actually also shapes, because the clarinet is a fantastic instrument to shape sound from the thin line between silent and sound until these, you can do whatever you want, and that's what you want with this instrument as well.
Yes, that reminds me of you're playing with no tone, just breath.
Exactly.
That's a rather beautiful thing too.
Mm.
I think you're describing a characteristic which I think is also very, very important for children. That if you're starting an instrument, they all vary in how bad they sound when you first pick it up or begin to play. But being able to get a tune and being able to approach a sound that gives you some pleasure, or you get a sense of it improving, that's also dependent on the instrument. To give a child a bad instrument, and that's how it has been, certainly with disabled people, is a killer, because you get none of the inner sort of, that sounds too grand to say, aesthetic response, but I suppose that's what it is, the pleasure that comes from the sound and the melody and the performance, and particularly with other people, becomes impossible and discouraging. So I think you were saying, just to make a beautiful sound, that is essentially fundamental, I think, to it. So if you find that's achievable to your satisfaction, then I will travel the world to hear that on a concert platform.
These ones definitely are comparable to the best.
To the best,
To the best.
I totally believe you.
They're superlative, and that even at a week's old production is comparable to the instruments that we would have children playing in their whole class. So a child learning on something like that would be on an equal with their peers for the first time ever, and that's just wonderful.
Have you played it then? Okay, you played that upstairs.
We were testing them upstairs. Yes.
Okay. But even at that, you can tell that it's has that capacity. Yeah. I think it's a wonderful thing. But as I say, it's having your support and being able to. That gives us ambition too, to be able to get you those instruments and
let's collaborate. I think it's a good. I tell everyone that you should never do things alone. The best ideas is the one that you get together with people. So I'm very, very. I think it's inspiring, and I think also that people, like we said, if I imagine that this is very different in price.
I think it will be.
It will be.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how available it will be then to so many more people, and that's like produce. Exactly, that's a little bit like they do with the violin now, with all these makers making modern instrument, and of course they are also expensive, but not compared to the older one. And that's important to have to open new doors to get instrument there you can really buy, and it sounds good.
Well, Martin, thank you very, very much indeed. And I know you've squeezed this into a very tight schedule.
It was very nice talking to you.
Well, it's been wonderful for us too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll talk again.
Keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bravo, bravo.